And good day, good night, welcome to Euro Today. I'm Laramee, joined by Duane Rollins as always, and we're back today with a live show predicting the knockout stage, looking at, of course, the matchup for the round of 16, and then the potential matchup down the road, and of course, we'll look at the final group stage standings. There was a couple of upsets, a couple of surprises, and a crazy day yesterday in Group E, but especially in Group F. But first of all, Duane, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm enjoying a day without the football, to be quite frank with you, because it's been a lot, including having to watch MLS, and the less said about that, the better from a Toronto perspective.
What are you talking about, Chris Armas? No, not today.
Yeah, not today, not ever. But we'll see if he lasts until we come back and talk about him again. We'll see. I think he probably will, which is good for Montreal fans. We'll say that.
Yeah, because right now, Montreal is the best team in MLS from the Canadian perspective, because the Vancouver Whitecaps also had a fifth straight defeat. So yeah, there's that. But let's talk about the Euro, and of course, the wrapping up of the group stage yesterday. Group E and Group F wrapped up yesterday, and it was an interesting day, of course, some interesting results, but let's just go through some of the results that surprised us yesterday. Of course, there was a craziness in Group F, and maybe we should start with the Group of Death, because for some part, it looked like this group was going to see Hungary move through, Germany eliminated, and at the end of the day, France finished first, Germany second, Portugal third, and Hungary fourth. But Hungary should really be proud of the two games that they actually stole points to, and that's what I thought was going to happen. That's what happens in a group of death. You have a crazy result, and then things don't go the same. But at the end of the day, I think logic was respected in this group.
Yeah, it was a roundabout way to get to where, a lot of people would have picked going in, right, based on historical rankings. But as you say, Hungary, had held high. Any other group, they're probably advancing. So it's unfortunate for them in that way. But they did, prove that they can compete. And, with 18 months to go, or 16 months, I should say, to go to the World Cup, we'll see how they can do in qualifying for that. But, yeah, crazy day. Like, it was, with 20 minutes to go, Germany was bottom. And, they got to go back to draw it. So they're through, and set up the matchup that I think, from a historical perspective is pretty intriguing, although from a how they play in perspective, I'm not sure. But
yeah, I don't know, right? Germany looked good, but also drew against Hungary, right? And France also. But because Duane is alluding to England and Germany, that matchup, we'll break it down in the group of the round of 16 breakdown in just a few minutes. But France, Germany, Portugal, Hungary was the result in the group of death. And France did not look amazing. It was a game of penalties. Ronaldo actually looked good. And that leap, Ronaldo's leap when he goes for a header, and he almost scored in that second half, I have to say, wow, he still has that height on balls, which Ronaldo could still, he's going to win the Golden Boot of this tournament, probably. That's how amazing he's been in this tournament.
Yeah, well, Portugal's got them where they need them, right? Right where they want
them.
Third,
that's where you want to be. Third place, then straight to the finals. Battle tested if you make it there, which, you know what? Might not be stupid after all.
Yeah, I even think, I'd have to go back and look, but I even think they're in the exact same spot in the draw, in that top of the draw first matchup. So we'll see how this plays out. But, group of death. So I don't think anyone wants to face any of those teams heading into this. I watched that game, the Portugal-Germany game, Portugal-France game. I watched that in Little Portugal. So I can tell you that there was a lot of Ronaldo fans around, and they were quite happy with the performance. And I think from my gathering of the, feeling the room out, that it felt like people were mostly satisfied with getting through it, surviving this group, and I think that was probably the key.
And going forward, there'll be an injury aspect for France, who lost a few good players in this one, going into the knockout stage, and also the lack of realism for France. Benzema scored a nice goal and scored a penalty. And before the end of this game, they were 22-0 when Benzema scored for the national team. Now they're 22 wins, 1 draw, and 0 defeat when Benzema scored, which is a good way to look at France's path in the knockout stage. If Benzema scores a couple goals, maybe they get a couple victories. And then, of course, if players, defensive players especially, can come back from injury at the right time, maybe France has a good shot.
Yeah, as we said a couple days ago, France is the favorite, and they were the favorite in 2018 after they got rolled. They were clearly the team that was in the best chance of winning once that tournament started in Russia. But they never dominate. They don't blow teams out, and we're seeing a bit of that. They're battle-tested, as you suggest. And look, there have been teams that have been more impressive in the group stage. There's no doubt. But, to be the man, you got to beat the man. And until I see a team finish France off, and Portugal had a chance yesterday. But to get a loss on them, and yet they found a way back. And same with that Hungary game, they found a way back, and I think that speaks to what this tournament's going to be. If you're going to beat France, you're going to have to play a complete game and just not give them that half inch at some point, because that's what they do so well, is they hang in and they just grab the opportunities when it's there. It's setting up, if it goes chalk, for a really an Italy-France semifinal, which would be,
amazing
to our prediction. But that's kind of where it would go, and I think that would be the game that a lot of people would be looking forward to.
Now let's look at Group E, Duane, and a crazy result. Who have predicted that Sweden would win this group? 2 wins, a draw for the Swedes, and a good performance for Sweden. I guess that was the dark horse. Sweden was Turkey. Sweden was the actual dark horse of this tournament.
Yeah, or if you want to look at it another way, Sweden is 2004 Greece.
So they haven't really. Well, they do conceded 2 goals with the last one, but you're right. Before that they were really solid defensively.
Yeah, and that's they're going to play a mid block and look for an opportunity when it arises. Which is it's a tactic that works, and people can look down their nose at it. And certainly from an entertainment perspective, I do as well, but I cannot argue with the logic of keeping it tight and hoping, particularly in a tournament where players are so tired, right? And you have a bunch of players that maybe haven't played as much. I give them a chance in the knockout rounds, it's whenever a smaller team does well, wins a group, you're still never quite convinced until you see them win a knockout game. That's when the tournament really starts to kick off, and certainly I'm looking forward to seeing that play out in the weekend.
Yeah, and it will play out in a very different way than we'd imagined also. But let's talk about Spain and that big scoreline. Slovakia, of course, and Poland. Poland was put to the sword in this one, and they even came back. It was 1-1. When Lewandowski scored his second goal of the tournament, I'm like, you know what? Poland's gonna take it to the Spaniards. But then, when it rains it pours, and Spain just decided to actually start scoring goals.
Well, yeah, like to continue with your rain analogy, it's like, if there's like a pool on your roof, eventually there's going to be a hole to break and it's just going to flood, right? And that's
so expected goals was the water in that pool, and eventually it's going to work.
Yeah, you need to get your roof fixed eventually. And look, yeah, they played well on the day. Now, look, I don't know. They were my pick to win the tournament in the previous show. So I was kind of relieved they, weren't eliminated in the first round. That would have been embarrassing. But certainly when you put a marker down like that, and if you can figure the offense out on that team and get moving and get rolling, then they're going to be a hard out. That said, it's hard to not. Yeah, the XG is really good. The only issue with XG is that it sometimes overestimates teams that don't have a real strong finisher, because XG in football is still kind of like, it's not a 0.2 XG isn't a 0.2 really for everyone. It's not a statistical norm. But if you can't finish them, yeah.
You're right. It's just like if you're Ronaldo or Messi, it's a little higher what it actually means. If you're most human beings, it's a little lower, and XG is somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and Spain's weakness is for sure, they're up front. They play with limited strikers or with kind of strikers that have a role on that team that aren't necessarily the same as you might have in a more traditional lineup. But that said, they still could look damn impressive when they're passing that ball around. And once the dam burst, as we said yesterday, it was not pretty, unless you're Spanish.
Well, exactly, unless you're Sergio Busquets. And was that the difference? The return of Sergio Busquets in the lineup after the COVID aspect, of course, and the return of course, when we're talking about Azpilicueta defensively. And, of course, their 1-1 draw with Poland and Lewandowski's performance, I thought that would carry over. And even in the Sweden and Poland game, I thought Lewandowski's goal there. So the 2-goal performance for Lewandowski in the tournament is impressive. Slovakia, I think they just ran out of steam against Spain in the last game. And that 5-0 victory, I think, really tells us more about Slovakia's lack of depth, because the short turnaround of games and the core of this team, how a bit older they are when we're talking about Marek Hamšík and Robert Mak. And let's not forget that the weather in this tournament has been warm across games, especially in places like La Cartuja Stadium in Sevilla. We had cooling breaks at some points during the day in other places. It has been a tournament that the weather has been very summer-like, because it's summer in the south of Europe also. And I think teams like Slovakia, that has a little higher middle range of age group in the team, especially with their leaders like Hamšík and Robert Mak, to use that example, you see the result in the third game. And we've seen fatigue be a factor in the third group stage game across the board.
Yeah, and also it's a sideways score, but I think you have to spare a thought for the emotions, how they sink, and it becomes very difficult at that point to get it back in track, right? And it can get out of control when you're a small nation like that playing, one of the powers of the game. So it happens. So I wouldn't necessarily, if I'm Slovakian, I'm pretty proud of the fact that they got it this close, and Spain needed to score a lot of goals too, because they could have been a draw situation where they needed the goal diff, but so it wasn't pretty at the end.
That's that's where I wanted to also mention is the fact that knowing what amount of points it needed, Spain needed 4 points, and also it needed at least differential in case there was draws at that point to go through, to make sure that they go through. And Spain has a bit of PTSD because of that, because they've been eliminated in the past for that reason not that long ago, right? So they made sure that they worked there. But I'm still not convinced of how Luis Enrique has been choosing the players to play. Some players not using this team, and it's going to be interesting to see how they react in the group stage. Well, actually, yeah. I mean, in the knockout stage after the group stage.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think this tournament is, we've mentioned a couple of the favorites, but I don't think any team is so far and above that this is not going to be a pretty wide open knockout stage, and I can see a couple upsets happening. So I'm quite looking forward to it because of the unpredictability of it. And that's the great thing about the Euro too. We don't see a lot of upsets in the World Cup. It's pretty normally the predictable teams in the finals, right? But the Euros is a different animal. We've seen upset winners in the Euro, and it'd be delightful to have another one, to be honest. So hopefully we don't go chalk, because chalk's boring.
All right, let's take a short break. When we come back, we'll look at the knockout stage, matchup by matchup, and the potential quarterfinals matchup, juicy matchup potentials that we have for the quarterfinals, and even the round of 16. It's pretty juicy, and we'll break it all down after this short break. You are listening to Euro Today with Duane Rollins and myself, Kev Laramee. Follow us on Twitter at SoccerTodaySPN. Subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcast, and subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/sports podcasting network. And we're back on Euro Today. Kev Laramee with Duane Rollins, as always, as we start to break down the knockout stage of the Euro. Can you believe that the group stage is already over? It feels like it's been such a quick turnaround.
Yeah, it for sure. I mean, there's so much football, right? That we looked to this tournament. It was kind of this not bad dream. That's a little too flippant, but it was just like, oh God, we're gonna play that too, sort of situation for a long time. And then once it gets rolling, it's like, wow, we're on a break day. And like I said, I'm enjoying the day off.
Yeah.
I'm doing my writing, got some Doctor Who fired up. It's a good old day here. But
Yeah, I'm getting ready for a hockey game tonight. That could be very interesting to watch. We'll see.
well, yeah, and there you go. You're gonna party like it's 1992.
Well, there's still a few more games that need to happen for that. But let's start looking at this knockout stage. First matchup in the bracket, and this is of course in order following what could happen. Portugal will be the visiting team against Belgium. Portugal, seed 116 if you want to have that analogy. Belgium, one of the teams that looked great in their group stage. Not sure about their position. The game against Denmark is, of course, emotionally charged for multiple reasons. And speaking of Denmark, Duane, not that I want to toot my own horn or the own horn of my day job, but yesterday on TV Sport, the French channel, we actually had Kasper Hullmann, the manager of Denmark, the coach, the one who was on the sideline, the one who's managing this team, because he used to be the assistant coach of Patrice Bernier when Patrice Bernier was playing in Norway and, of course, in Denmark. And we have a great interview, and you can see it online. A very good interview in English that TV Sport did with Kasper Hullmann. So that was a great interview, and to get to see a bit of the behind the scenes of the Christian Eriksen, wow, the whole aspect of this, from the emotional, the game, the drama, the medical emergency, all the way to the motivational story that comes out of it. Great interview.
And that's why you have former players on your journalism staff, so you can have those contacts, right?
Yeah, because otherwise he ain't returning your calls.
Yeah, he's good TV. What?
You're like,
where?
Huh? What? No, I'm not doing any other TV show. Oh, Patrice is calling. Give me a second. I gotta answer.
Well, Patrice is a lovely guy, so I'm sure that he has fond memories of him. So you don't turn Patrice down when he asks, because he doesn't ask for much, I'm sure.
No, exactly.
Yeah, look, I'm sure Belgium heading into to get back on the matchups, Belgium heading into this has got to feel a little hard done by that it's Portugal that they drew. But, if you're going to be European champions, you got to beat the teams in front of you, and you got to beat the best teams. And,
Yep.
and Portugal, I don't think is firing completely on all cylinders, and Belgium has looked great. It's a tough out, but I think it's almost better for them if they can get past this hurdle, that being Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
Then you start to look at them as a potential winner of this tournament. But right now it looks like a banana peel for sure. But that, I think, again, is just us looking at Belgium in the past and going, they haven't got it done before. So,
Yeah, that's true. And we have to also look at the fact that, well, Kevin De Bruyne played a full 90 in the third game and was inspirational in that one for multiple reasons. Just how he plays, handles the control of the ball, and he's going to be a key player, literally, for Belgium, for them to win. And Lukaku has to continue to score. And on any given game, when you have a Kevin De Bruyne that can find a Romelu Lukaku, don't bet against that, regardless of what this could be. Can you imagine what that Chelsea team would look like if things... Thank you, Mourinho. I still have a little chip on my shoulder. Well, you know what? Champions League champion and all, I should probably get over it.
They beat the team that he went to. So there you go. Kevin De Bruyne, if he can stay healthy this fall and take Belgium deep in this tournament, you're having a conversation about him in December about a Ballon d'Or,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, how
right.
can you not?
Yeah, absolutely. He's an incredible player, especially when you watch him week in, week out, as I do, and many others, obviously. So, yeah, no, look, I'm not going to lie. I'm kind of rooting for the Belgians a little bit in this. I'd like to see this generation finish the job. Lukaku was brilliant after the Eriksen. His reaction was inspiring. So you kind of cheer a little bit there.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm a De Bruyne fan. So, if in so much as I'm cheering for a team in this tournament, it's kind of them at this point. I suppose I'm technically cheering for the English, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. That'll be another topic for just in a few minutes. But also, when we talk about Romelu Lukaku, the link with Christian Eriksen, of course, is they are playing together. Well, they were playing together in Inter Milan. So that's where the love of Romelu Lukaku to Christian Eriksen came through. But the winner of Belgium and Portugal will face the winner of Italy and Austria. A matchup that actually is a bit more lopsided. Italy has looked very good, but don't count out Austria. Austria had no win in the Euro before making in this tournament, and they did get the job done. Arnautovic will be available. He served his suspension in the second game, and he was an instrumental part of their win in the third game. But Italy is everyone's favorite at this point just because the way they looked, and because the way they looked in the last 11 games they played. They haven't conceded a goal in over 11 games now. And that is a fascinating aspect. And they've scored a ton. That's the difference with this Italy national team. We're not just talking about the catenaccio style of soccer and the gritty and the defensive and, winning games 1-0. No. We're talking about inspirational performances in the midfield by Locatelli, Insigne, Immobile, finishing their opportunities with high efficiency. That's the new Italian job.
Yeah, this team's good. As I've said a couple times in the lead up, it's becoming increasingly clear that they are emerging as the favorites in the tournament. As you say, Austria is not going to be a pushover here, but if you are to be the favorites in this tournament, you should be able to handle them fairly comfortably. Now, that next matchup after that's going to be a different question and a hell of a game. But
even the one after that, too, because the one after that could be France, Switzerland, Croatia, or Spain. So you either have the world champion, the finalists of the last World Cup, or a team that actually looked really good in the last game in Spain. So that side of the draw, that bracket is nuts when you think about it, because you have Belgium, you have Portugal, you have Italy, you have France, and you have Spain.
Yeah, that is for sure. You have France-Spain as potential quarterfinal matchup too, right? And that's the heavier side of the bracket. You wanted to be on the bottom of the bracket, but again, like I said before, if you're going to win, you got to beat these teams anyway. So you might as well beat them early. Have a little softer touch in the final. Of course, that was City's thoughts too in the Champions League.
And then it didn't go according to plan. All right, France, Switzerland, a bit of a lopsided. Switzerland did not look great at any point in this tournament, and of course, in their last game, we saw Shaqiri performing well. 2 great worldy type of goal in this one to help Switzerland qualify for the round of 16. I think France will do like usually it happens between France and Switzerland in multiple sports, and France will just have the better of the Swiss.
Yeah, well, this one's got 1-0 written all over it, doesn't it?
It does, but a 1-0 that France were not really challenged the entire time.
Yeah, no, they allow 2 shots, 1 on target, and have 12 shots, 3 on target, and score 1.
And like 6 blocked, because that's the only reason why it wouldn't be on target.
Yeah, it's they'll just dominate without being domineering. That's, as you say, the Swiss, we've joked a couple times in this tournament, they're always the 20th ranked team in the world. They're always about there, and this is about always where they fall. So yeah,
it is where they fall. They're out of 16 every single time.
Yeah, I don't really see an upset here, but funny things can happen with that round ball.
Well, exactly. Speaking of Croatia, Spain, a salivating matchup in the round of 16. As much as I was impressed by Luka Modric's performance in the third game in the group stage, Spain also looked great. And depending of injuries, depending of form, or depending of the formation used by Luis Enrique, it'll be interesting. But I kind of see Spain ending the generation of Croatia.
Yeah, the Scotland game seemed like a bit of a last gasp by Croatia. And let's be frank here. Scotland was among the weaker teams on paper in the tournament. So they had
on the field too. Like on the field too.
Yeah, well, they allowed some wonder goals in this, but and Modric's goal was incredible. What a laser, and he proves what kind of player he can be. Croatia was rounding into form, but I'm going to lean Spain in this simply because, as you say, it does seem like an end of a generation, not the middle of a generation, right? The end of a run. And we'll see. But good effort to go up to Scotland and get the win there for sure to guarantee their qualifying. They were clearly quite happy with it if you saw the reaction at the final whistle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've enjoyed this Croatian team over the years, but they do seem a little done. Yeah.
Unless they can find Perisic on a wonder place, and maybe that's why you have Perisic move over a bit more on the flanks. We'll see tactically how they adjust to Spain, or how Spain adjusts to playing a good team versus a team that will let them have the ball. All right, Croatia will probably show a bit more with the pressing and trying to beat that tiki-taka, the classic tactical matchup of the last decade, probably recreated here. Let's start to talk about the bottom side of that bracket. Sweden, Ukraine, the battle of the blue and yellows.
Absolutely, it is the battle of the blue and yellows. Who's going to wear what strip?
Just close your eyes, open them again, and you'll be all confused. Who's who? Exactly. That's the battle of the blue and yellow.
Exactly. I want to be a very yellow game. Ukraine got a little lucky to get in there. Grab that final third place finish. First tournament that they've qualified for. They looked terrible in that final game, as we talked about at the time. Like, even, so far as I would even say suspiciously terrible at times. Like, you sure you're this flat? Or anyway, what's going on there? I don't want to say that too loud, but
exactly.
So, the Swedes, we talked about them in the first half a bit, so I'm not going to belabor too much here, but they've been very solid, and this is a winnable game for them. And suddenly they're in the quarterfinals at that point, and if you can defend, who knows?
That's the thing. In Sweden, if they can defend and move on from the round of 16, they'll be in a game against either England or Germany. And then, of course, it's all about defending. Neither of these teams actually look great, both Germany and England. The thing is the pressure is a bit more on England here, just because they're playing in England, because we're all wondering if the Queen's going to be there. We're all wondering if Elon Musk is going to have a show up at the game. But we should talk about the actual game itself. Can Gareth Southgate actually use his weapons properly? Harry Kane is not the focal point of this attack, and that's fine. Use him as a deterrent the way you have been. Jadon Sancho has to find a way on the pitch in an influential role. Also, Phil Foden. We're seeing across this Euro, and except Cristiano Ronaldo, the youth are propelling teams, not necessarily just the veteran. Look at Italy. Look at other great performances in this one. It's the youth that are helping teams, and that's what you have to do for England. Give the keys of the Bentley to Foden and company.
Yeah, and you need to get Harry Kane scoring too. That, I think, goes without saying. Raheem Sterling has all of England's goals in this tournament, which
is only two, by the way.
Yeah,
but they haven't conceded any.
So that's positive there. And look, I think England's the favorite in this. They're at home. They have been on better form. Germany had that one great game against the Portuguese, but haven't looked good otherwise. That said, there's a history, obviously, between these two countries on the soccer pitch, not to mention the history books, but we'll leave that one 80 years ago.
Talking about like the London bombings, and of course there's like a whole lot of histories in two world wars, but we're just talking about it on the soccer pitch, which there's a lot of history there too, I guess.
Yeah. No, I never forget those wars, because fascism, but maybe time to move on from a rivalry standpoint. So it's an intriguing narrative for sure. Couldn't be a dud of a game. Like, England is just playing really dull. Now, look, they've got to look at their pathway, and if it's either Sweden or Ukraine in that quarterfinal, and suddenly England's saying we go back-to-back semifinals in major events if they can get past Germany. And it was Sweden they beat in the World Cup, we should note as well, to get to the semifinals. So, it's kind of setting up for them again, and they're on the weaker side of the draw, and who knows? They were going to fully open Wembley for the semifinals and finals to 60,000. So who knows? Wouldn't that be something?
Wouldn't that be something, of course? Or wouldn't that be a bit too terrifying? And then the result. All right, let's continue in our look at the knockout stage, round of 16. The Netherlands against the Czech Republic. Czech Republic have looked good, but of course, Patrick Schick is the key of this team, which means Frank de Boer can maybe design a defensive game plan to nullify the one offensive threat of the Czech Republic, and to highlight the couple of offensive threat of the Netherlands, and Gennaro Wijnaldum and Memphis Depay are probably going to find the back of the net and the Netherlands away into the quarterfinals.
The Dutch have been kind of flying under the radar. they haven't had high profile games yet, and this is another one that's going to kind of fly under the radar. I suspect, if you can't watch all the games, if you're not like me and able to plant yourself in front of a TV all day. I'm actually getting my second shot on Sunday, purposely picked it before the game starts so I can just have an excuse to do nothing but watch football all day. Anyway, yeah, it's another game under the radar. And like you say, then suddenly they're in a quarterfinal, and then, no one is under the radar at that point. But the Dutch and the Italians are interesting in the sense that they both kind of had a dip there, obviously, and they've emerged out of it closer to what they are more traditionally known for. So I'm going to try to pay more attention to them in this game because, honestly, because of their matchups, because they've been fairly comfortable, they just haven't been a focal point and not really getting talked about a lot. So that's interesting to me. And that said, they won a group and they have an easy touch, but an easier touch in this game. So
exactly. But they beat North Macedonia and they beat Austria. They haven't beaten France or Spain or Italy, and they were actually brought back in the score against Ukraine. Ukraine really pushed them in that game in the first game. And then, of course, they got the late goal to win this one, the Netherlands, because they were perfect in the group. But it's not like 3 wins that were emphatic victories. You beat Austria 2-0, but it's Austria. You're not talking about a world powerhouse, or at least not historically. So that's and also an Austria team without, that's the one where they're actually Austria did not have Arnautovic in that one. So that's where also you beat Austria without their best player. So
again, not having the best matchups in this, but you win who's in front of you. And they have. So you got to respect them for that. And this is another winnable game. And then we'll have a conversation about the next one.
Speaking of the next one, Wales, Denmark. The entire world is with Denmark. We wish them well. And Wales have looked also pretty good in this tournament so far. But this is a matchup that is actually a bit unpredictable. Both teams could believe they have a path to victory in this one.
Yeah, there's a fairy tale no matter who wins this, right? The Welsh going to back-to-back quarterfinals and beyond in a major tournament, well, in the Euros, not the major tournament, they didn't make World Cup, would be a great story. And they were not really that fancied heading into this, but have stepped up and have played very well. Obviously, the Denmark story is, we know what it is. It's been the story of this European Championship. And, they had to scramble on that final day, and they have all the momentum of getting that emotional win to get themselves in. Someone put the stat out. It was the first 9-3-3-3 group finish in like 70 years or something in a World Cup or Euro. Like, you just don't see that very often, and they were the beneficiary of it. And good for them. The world is, unless you're Welsh, the world is probably hoping for at least another game. And that would set up a very interesting little derby there too, if they were to, win that and the Dutch were to win theirs. So neighbors are going after each other, and that's always fun.
And let's just look overall in this bottom of the bracket. England, Germany, of course, will bring a contender into the quarterfinals, and to an easier quarterfinal than maybe the rest. They'll face the winner of Sweden or Ukraine. And then the Netherlands, who are the favorite against Czech Republic, can find themselves against maybe an easier path to a semi here also. So I can see the Netherlands and I can see England, Germany facing each other into the semi. And on the top side of the bracket, that's where you have at least five contenders at the beginning of this, in Belgium, Portugal, Italy, France, and Spain. And you could even add Croatia into the mix if you want to. And at the end of the day, it'll be a battle royale, a Royal Rumble, and whoever survives the chair shot will be into the semifinal.
There you go. It's going to be a cage match to the death. I was trying to get a wrestling analogy in there, but I really couldn't pull one out of my head. So there you go.
Who's going to be thrown off the cage? Who's going to land on the table? By God, Lord is my witness. They've broken it in half.
I was trying to think, what were the matches Nick Foley was so famous for?
Hell in a Cell or hardcore matches. Hey, he did everything. He did a exploding table match against Terry Funk at some arena in Japan.
Yeah. Little do you know, if you're new to listen to this, that we are a part-time wrestling podcast too, which is, not something we expect. Also, hockey references. That's what we do. Get your bingo card out.
Go Habs, go.
There you go. I have no issue with the Habs here in Toronto. I'm fine with them. Anyway.
Exactly. Moving on.
With Celine Dion, though. Did you see the headline?
That's funny. Yeah, she's like, it's a montage. I did not have anything to do with that picture. Please don't stop loving me.
Traitor.
Traitor. Burner. Burn. No.
Oh, funny. Where were we?
Well, it was about time to wrap up the show, to think about the knockout stage. And of course, Saturday is the next match day, and we'll be back with a brand new show to break down the first few games in the round of 16. Until then, you can follow Duane on social media at 24th Minute, myself at Kev Laramee, and this show at Soccer Today SPN. And as always, until next time, have a great soccer.